Jenna Ortega's casting as Wednesday Addams will go down as one of the best casting decisions of all time, and nothing proves this more than her now viral dance sequence in episode 4. Ortega's performance in the scene is full of quirky energy, but did you know that she hadn't slept for 2 whole days before filming it? Shocking as that may be, there's a lot to unpack here, so let's get started. First up, she choreographed it herself. Dance scenes take a lot of work to choreograph, which is why most actors leave it to the professionals. Ortega is clearly on a different level though, because she chose to choreograph it herself. She was fully in character the whole time, and with full days of shooting to deal with, it's no surprise that she didn't have any time left to sleep. Since this was a big budget show, the choreography had to be spot on, especially for a dance scene that was always going to be a centerpiece of the whole project. It takes hours and hours to perfect just a few minutes of dancing, and Ortega made sure she put the hours in by staying up. Moving on, what exactly did she spend those 2 days doing? We've all spent sleepless nights in anticipation of a big day. For Ortega, her nerves alone would have been enough to keep her up, but she didn't spend that time lying down. If the dance moves seemed familiar, she skipped out on Dreamland to watch goth dance videos from the 80s. That's what gave her choreography that spooky vibe. She planned out her moves to a background of Susie and the Banshees, The Cure, and a bunch of other 80s goth legends. And we'd all better thank her because the results were out of this world. Not to mention, she had a bunch of other things to learn. Acting is a tough job, so it was bold of Ortega to refuse a choreographer. It gets even crazier when you realize how much else she had on her plate. Wednesday Addams does all sorts of things on the show, from playing cello covers of rock classics to high-stakes fencing contests. A lesser actor may have pretended to play the cello or let a stunt double in a mask handle the fencing, but Ortega was way too hands-on for any shortcuts. She learned the basics of fencing and cello on top of everything else. How'd she get all this done in time, you ask? That's an interesting question, and you'll find out why. What's more, she almost didn't make it in time. Shooting 10 episodes makes for a hectic schedule, and Ortega almost forgot that she had promised to choreograph her own dance. She felt pretty embarrassed when Tim Burton reminded her that the shoot was coming up, so she had to pack all of the choreography into 2 days. If you ever feel bad about doing your assignment hours before the deadline, just remember that Ortega did this with the most viral dance scene of the year, and things worked out pretty well for her, we'd say. Not to mention the elephant in the room. Look, we know what you're thinking. The dance wasn't the only thing about Ortega that went viral. There was also the small matter of her COVID diagnosis. People lost their minds when they found out she was sick during filming. Some were mad at the director for making her work. Others pointed the finger at Ortega for putting her co-workers at risk. All we can say is that she was down with COVID and pulled 2 straight all-nighters to get the job done. That's impressive enough, and it's not like nobody knew she was infected. A bunch of professionals made a judgment call, and we got to see something wonderful because of it. Following up, how did Ortega feel about it? Ortega's been pretty vocal about how bad of a dancer she is. Now, we don't know if she's humble or blind, but one thing we do know is this: that girl can dance. Still, it's hard for an artist to look at their work the same way us humble viewers do. Apparently, Ortega wasn't entirely happy with how the scene turned out and wanted to do another take. Unfortunately for her, the crew was running out of time, so she wasn't able to redo it. We honestly can't see how the scene could have been any better, and now we'll probably never know. Still, if that scene wasn't Jenna at her best, we're shaking to think what she'll pull off in season 2. Is there anything better than flawless? Guess we'll just have to wait and see. Wednesdays racked up 341 million viewing hours on Netflix. Let's take a look at how it became a pop culture phenomenon. Let's look at the source, the Addams Family. Most of us have grown up with the Addams Family in some way, shape, or form. Some of you might be familiar with the 90s cartoon, and almost everyone has seen the awesome movies that pushed Christina Ricci to stardom as the original Wednesday. Netflix has been looking to up the ante in its content catalog, and an IP like the Addams Family was ripe for the picking, full of macabre story elements with a loving family at its center. This show was an easy sell from the start. Secondly, they focused on the right character. Addams Family purists still aren't over the lack of Pugsley, Gomez, Morticia, and Lurch. All these characters make an appearance, with other fan faves like Cousin It also coming in for a brief stint, but this show was definitely all about Wednesday. That turned out to be a great decision. Shows with plucky female characters are all the rage, and what better character represents these values than the girl herself? Moving on, the vibe was just right. If there's one thing diehard fans fear, it's a Netflix adaptation that makes way too many changes. We've all been begging Netflix to just stay true to the dang source material, but it's hard to argue against a soulless platform that treats viewers like data points. We were expecting the show to be super shallow. Just look at what they did to The Witcher for Pete's sake. But thankfully, every character on the show seems pretty on point. Gomez has his trademark oily charm. Morticia looks like a real ice queen who surprises everyone with her warmth. Pugsley is a little demon who loves his big sister. And don't get us started on Thing. That little hand made the whole show so much better. The show's not a one-to-one match to the cartoons or the original movies, but they did a good job of staying true where it counts. Following up, here's why we love the changes. You might be disappointed if you were hoping for an exact replica of your favorite childhood movies. The show's producers haven't altered any original characters, but they added a ton of elements that can take old fans by surprise. That's not to say that the changes are bad though. In fact, we felt like they added a lot of flavor to the show. The fantasy school scenario is done to death, but this time around it feels fresh and unique. That's just what happens when you have compelling characters, and they didn't focus too much on making it a Hogwarts ripoff. No one wants Potterheads picking up the pitchforks, so it's great that they incorporated the magical school aspect so tastefully. Also, the various new characters we got were all top-notch, from the hardcore Principal Weems to the mysterious Xavier. Every new character has layers of mystery that keep you on the edge of your seat. Next up, the show is effortlessly relatable. Wednesday Addams goes against everything people used to say girls should be. She's headstrong, independent, sarcastic, and unwilling to change herself to appease others. That may have been subversive back in the 90s, but in the 21st century, it's just how girls are. That lets Wednesday act as a stand-in for a lot of girls who don't feel confident enough to be themselves. She's weird and unique, but that doesn't stop her from having friends. And since she refuses to be anyone but herself, her friends love her for who she is instead of who she's pretending to be. Not to mention the star-studded cast and crew. Jenna Ortega ended up being the best thing to come out of Wednesday, but she was a virtual unknown before the show came out. Netflix added a bunch of massive stars to the cast, which probably got many people worked up well before the release. Everyone knows Gwendolyn Christie from Game of Thrones, and her recent stint as Lucifer herself on Sandman kept her on people's minds. She's great as the principal of Nevermore Academy, bringing all of her star power to spice up an otherwise bland character. Catherine Zeta-Jones makes a comeback as Morticia Addams too. She hasn't been around much, but Wednesday gave her the chance to remind us why we loved her with a pitch-perfect performance as the Addams family matriarch. Then of course there's the return of Christina Ricci as Marilyn Thornhill, which was a nice little tribute to her 90s era Wednesday. Also, we'd be crazy not to mention that Tim Burton literally directed this show. The director of Edward Scissorhands, Sweeney Todd, Sleepy Hollow, and Corpse Bride brings his special macabre charm that fits the show perfectly. And last but not least, the gripping mystery at the heart of the show. A good mystery can make up for a lot of bad acting and writing, but luckily Wednesday gave us the best of all worlds. The mystery at the show's heart is fast-paced, ramping up to a dramatic conclusion after setting the stage in the earlier episodes. Each revelation shocks you more than the last, and we don't want to spoil anything, but there are some well-disguised twists that we honestly never saw coming. It's not enough to have a mystery on its own. A string of inexplicable events will get kind of frustrating if they don't expand on the story. Rather than being randomly tacked on, Wednesday's core mystery connects all the threads of the show in a neat little bundle. Every explanation is earned, the payoffs are deliciously satisfying, and we also get some juicy backstories in the mix. We're definitely keeping our eyes peeled for Season 2, and if it's anything like Season 1, we're all in for the ride of our lives. And with all that, that's a wrap for this video. Did you like Jenna Ortega's viral dance as much as we did? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.